What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Fast. Today, let's get started with Bo Nickal vows to take down all UFC opponents, says Paul Craig fight only an exception. Bo Nickal says he abandoned his wrestling, only for Paul Craig at UFC 309. Nickal received criticism for not resorting to his decorated wrestling background and instead choosing to stand with Craig in their middleweight bout earlier this month. He swept the scorecards to claim a lackluster unanimous decision win, but many pundits and fans weren't impressed with his performance. Nickal was especially critiqued for having previously downplayed Khamzat Chimaev's wrestling, but he's still confident that he'd have the edge if they grappled. My goal has always been to be UFC champion pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world. And so, when I call out guys like Khamzat, that's because I think that he's really good, and I want to fight the best guys. I think that this last fight, even though people didn't love the performance, was a great step in the right direction. I dominated a veteran, a guy who has 26 fights for 3 straight rounds with just using striking. I didn't even use my biggest asset. I want to keep dominating. I look at my potential for matchups in the future, and with Paul Craig, it's like his best position's off his back. So, I didn't think it was the best situation to put him in his best position, but there's really no other guys like that. Demetrious Johnson says leaving UFC was the best move of his career. It has been 6 years since Demetrious Johnson left the UFC in a trade that brought in Ben Askren from One Championship. Johnson's exit, much like Francis Ngannou's, was a direct result of their disputes regarding pay with the UFC. Johnson did not think he was earning enough money, after he had established himself as arguably the best fighter in the UFC at the time. If an asset isn't bringing in enough money that it should, then they wanted to get rid of it. So why not go somewhere where they're gonna appreciate me? I think it was the best decision I ever made in my career. The former UFC champ added that if he could go back in time, he would make that same decision again. He did not feel valued by Dana White and the UFC, and One Championship gave him his due. Paddy Pimblett opens up on future fight against UFC champion Islam Makhachev. Paddy hasn't been seen in the cage since a trip to Manchester in July. On the UFC 304 main card, Paddy Pimblett faced off with longtime lightweight contender Bobby Green. However, the fight wasn't even close. Paddy Pimblett quickly took down Green and scored a first-round submission victory. Following the win, the British star called out Renato Moicano. However, the two lightweights are hoping to face off at some point in early 2025. It's a fight that Paddy Pimblett believes will help push him up the rankings. Like every fighter at 155 pounds, the Brit is currently chasing lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. People always say, "Do you think you beat Islam Makhachev?" And I'm like, obviously. You think I'm going to sit here and be like, "Oh no, he'd beat me." I respect Islam, he's a great champion. People would probably laugh at me for saying this, but obviously I think I'd beat him. I don't think any man on this planet could beat me. If I got into a cage with them, I think I'd beat everyone. If you think anyone in your division, or if anyone you're rivals with can beat you, you're in the wrong sport. Paddy Pimblett explains dramatic weight gain after UFC fights. Although Paddy Pimblett competes in the UFC lightweight division at 155 pounds, he is notorious for walking around at a much heavier weight between fights. Known for his love of food, Pimblett frequently undergoes dramatic weight fluctuations. Despite these challenges, the fan-favorite Scouse fighter continues to rack up impressive victories. Now I'm just back to my normal weight. I'm walking around at 194 pounds. After a fight week, I can go up to about 209 pounds. It's just where you have depleted your body. It holds on to everything. Where I've half put it in starvation mode for the week making weight, your body holds on to everything. So, as soon as I have salty stuff, it just retains the water. Chris Weidman questions not getting paid full purse despite UFC 309 fight cancellation. Chris Weidman revealed he won't be fully compensated after his UFC 309 fight was canceled last minute. Weidman was scheduled to fight Eric Anders less than 2 weeks ago at Madison Square Garden, but the fight was canceled on the night when Anders fell ill and wasn't cleared to compete. It was a devastating blow for the former UFC middleweight champion, who had friends and family fly in to watch him fight. They're going to take care of me. They're doing something for me. I'm not getting my full purse. I'll put that out there, which it's tough. You show up, you do everything right, and you don't get it. They also said that they were trying to find another opponent for me, I guess that whole day. They were looking for 205-pounders that either fought that day or anybody in the area, trying to do one of those Dan Ige type situations. Apparently, the New York Commission was not going to allow anything on that type of short notice, so that's what stopped that from happening. Robert Whittaker has bottom teeth removed following UFC 308. Whittaker was in action against Khamzat Chimaev back in October. This was a highly anticipated middleweight clash that had an emphatic finish. Chimaev took Whittaker down in the opening frame and forced him to tap out immediately from a face crank. As it turns out, Whittaker had intense pain from his bottom teeth. It's an issue that had plagued Robert for years, and now he's provided a stunning update. I haven't been able to bite down on an apple since I was 19. They've always been bad, and I don't know. I should have dealt with them much sooner. They're just gone, don't need them. My life is better without them. When they took them out, they found a massive cyst in my jaw, and they think that might have been where the infections were coming from for the teeth. At the very least, Whittaker was able to find out why his bottom teeth have been an issue for all these years. Whittaker appears to be happy to simply get down to the root of the problem and continue his fighting career without worrying about it again. Francis Ngannou suggests why Jon Jones might be delaying Tom Aspinall fight. There has been a clamoring for a showdown with interim heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall. While Jones has been dismissive of the idea, he's found an unlikely supporter in former heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou. Francis, weighing in on the matter, agrees that a win over Aspinall wouldn't add much to Jones's legacy. As he said, Aspinall needs that fight. I don't need it. And when you look at it, pretty much true. There's nothing more that he's going to gain in that fight other than money. But for Aspinall, which is someone that's coming and trying to cement his way in the division, that would be everything. Leon Edwards aims to reclaim UFC welterweight title next year. Leon Edwards is eager to get his UFC welterweight championship back. After 2 title defenses, Edwards lost his belt to Belal Muhammad by unanimous decision at UFC 304 in July. Edwards has remained outside of the limelight since then, but recently broke his silence. My goal right now is to obviously get the belt back. I'd love to be champion again by the end of the year, next year, around this time next year. So, just putting steps in place. I hadn't lost a fight now in like 9 years, so I was getting used to that feeling again. I feel I hate losing more than I love winning. You know, there's not much you can do now. You know, just move on from that. You put it behind you, and for me, it's more about what's next, and how do you get back to where you want to get to. My goal is to be a 2-time world champion. The loss to Belal Muhammad snapped Leon Edwards' 13-fight unbeaten streak and marked his first loss in more than 9 years. Jon Anik confident Jon Jones will fight Tom Aspinall and predicts when. Heading into UFC 309, heavyweight champion Jon Jones was hesitant to commit to competing beyond his title fight with Stipe Miocic. Coming out of UFC 309, Jones has sung a different tune, and that has UFC play-by-play commentator Jon Anik feeling quite optimistic about the matchup the masses are clamoring for. As far as Anik is concerned, Jones versus Aspinall is all but a lock to happen, provided Jones gets his wish in terms of compensation. If negotiations between Jones and the UFC go well, then Anik expects the fight to take place during the biggest week on the calendar next year. This is the fight. Even though Jon Jones isn't the natural heavyweight in body that Tom Aspinall is, he's not going to fight Alex Pereira right now. He's going to fight Tom Aspinall. It just comes down to what Jon Jones's number is. What is Jon Jones's net worth? What number is he looking for? Is it $25 million to show? You know, what is Michael Jordan worth? What is the greatest of all time worth? I feel like the company is in a great position to make this fight, and I think you've got to do Las Vegas. You've got to do International Fight Week 2025.